Poppy Playtime Chapter 5 has recently been released, meaning it is time to rank every chapter. Chapter 1, A Tight Squeeze. Chapter 2, Fly in a Web. Chapter 3, Deep Sleep. Chapter 4, Safe Haven. And Chapter 5, Broken Things. I personally believe that every chapter does something better than the others, but I also think that no chapter is perfect, which is why it will be pretty tough to rank them all. I will be ranking them based on 3 categories: gameplay, horror, and story. However, gameplay is going to be the most important factor because, it's a video game. Gameplay is literally the most important thing. I did make a video just like this a year ago with 4 of the chapters when chapter 4 released. However, this time I recently replayed every single chapter instead of just remembering things off the top of my head, which means this video is going to be a lot more in depth than my old one. So enough yapping, and let's get to ranking.
Your friend Huggy, Huggy Wuggy, will squeeze you until you pop.
Chapter 1. This chapter is the perfect introduction to the entire franchise. There's not a whole lot going on, but it does just enough to pull the player into the whole environment, that being the factory. We are also introduced to Huggy Wuggy, which many of us probably thought was Poppy at first. The execution of his appearance blends in perfectly with the gameplay and horror elements. We all know that iconic jump scare where he suddenly appears when the player tries to walk through the hallway, leading to a well-designed chase sequence in the vents. This chase is still probably the best chase in the entire franchise still, even with the new Huggy Wuggy chases in Chapter 5, mostly because this still feels like the scariest chase. The vents feel tight and doors are closing and opening, but it still does not feel unfair because the player has time to react, unlike some other chases in future chapters. As you can tell, I do not have many problems with this chapter, but why is it in last place? Well, because it's just simple and short. That is not a bad thing, but when you compare it to the other chapters, it just does not compete in my opinion. It does its job perfectly as a first chapter, and just because it's last doesn't mean it's bad. Okay, listen to me. I said that last time and someone was really upset. I'll say it one more time. Just because it's last doesn't mean it's bad. Chapter 4. Oh boy, have I changed my opinion. What, Junior? You can change your opinion? Okay, so a year ago I had this chapter at number 2, higher than chapter 2. And not gonna lie, it was probably because of recency bias. But after replaying it, it's just not that memorable except for the final act. The beginning and middle act feel like filler in most parts when it comes to the gameplay. But first I want to start off with the positives. Doughy the Doughman's character arc and the way he betrayed us at the end was done amazingly well in my opinion. Like, this final sequence was much different from Catnap and Mommy Longlegs. Killing him was pretty darn sad to me because we know that he doesn't want to hurt anybody. It's just certain influences that cause him to break. The voice actor for Doughy was just perfect. Him screaming as he was being crushed to death was traumatic. Like, poor Doughy. Man, I wish he was in chapter 5. We could have defeated the prototype. I also strongly believe that chapter 4 still has the best ending because of the reveal of the prototype being Ollie and Huggy Wuggy still being alive. Like, that was an incredible way to end the chapter. And how could we forget the doctor, the creator of these experiments? I loved his voice, his design, the whole lore behind him was just fascinating. The lore was just insane in this chapter, which is why I loved it so much, especially with that ending. But unfortunately, I do not think the game does a good job incorporating those story elements into the gameplay and horror. This chapter is not scary compared to the previous ones. Chapters 1 to 3 had some jump scares. Even Mommy Longlegs, even though she doesn't have a scary design, was still able to scare you. Here you get none of that. The Doctor is a great character, but the gameplay is mostly just hide and seeking the batteries, and it was really easy to defeat him. Well, he's not dead, but you know what I mean. Also, there wasn't a new hand that spiced up the gameplay. The Omni hand did not do that. It literally was just a reskinned red hand. Another issue I had was the amount of characters you go up against. I feel like it should have just been Yarnaby as the pet, the Doctor, and Dowie. The nightmare critters were not needed in my opinion. And do not get me started with the bugs. Yes, I know they are fixed. I replayed the chapter and didn't have any issues, but that doesn't fix my first experience with the game. The first experience of a game is always the most important. If it's buggy, it ruins the initial impression. It doesn't matter if they fixed it later. To those who don't know, Yarnaby never spawned in my first playthrough, making his sequences a piece of cake but pretty boring. Now, I'm not saying the gameplay is an absolute disaster. There are really well made puzzles here like the ones I am showing you on screen. It's just that compared to the other 3 chapters on the list, I feel it doesn't do much to stand out gameplay wise. Story wise, yes, absolutely it stands out.
In every kind of way, now it's time to have some fun. Mommy Longlegs wants to play.
Chapter 2. This chapter has ranked higher than 4. Congratulations! I know compared to 4, this one is a lot shorter, but length does not matter. It's about the experience. Gameplay here is much more engaging and the game provides new elements to keep the player interested. The environment feels connected with all 3 of the minigames you have to play at the train station. They're all good gameplay sequences that utilize the hand mechanics in interesting ways. My favorite being the color sequence where you have to remember the color order that the robot says. Even replaying it, I still had fun. This chapter has pretty good replayability. The whack-a-wuggies can still be pretty challenging and that jump scare can get you good. Same thing with the PJ sequence. I love the red light green light element and how he is slowly creeping his way towards you. But the best gameplay element in this chapter is the introduction of the green hand. This is still my favorite hand in the franchise. It elevated the puzzles in such an incredible way. This puzzle you see right here is still one of the best puzzles in my opinion. You have to store the electricity in certain spots in order to grab it again and place it in the right location to open up the middle gate. Chapter 4 didn't have the green hand because we used it to burn catnap, but you would expect some kind of replacement, but that did not happen. Anyways, the big focus of chapter 2 is Mommy Longlegs, who I think is a solid character. I am not a fan of the design personally because I do not find her scary. You may say, well, that is because they are toys. But look at Huggy Wuggy and Catnap, they are toys and they look scary. Even though I do like Mommy Longlegs, she's definitely the weakest main antagonist in my opinion, but that does not make her bad. Remember, just because she is the weakest doesn't make her bad. The jump scare that she does is really good, however. It is designed in a clever way, making the player think they need to go up when in reality it is a trap for this jump scare. That is good game design. But this, yeah, this chase can easily be broken. This is probably just me nitpicking, but I do find it funny. All you have to do is stand in this corner, and yeah, the game is broken. But either way, I'm not a huge fan of her chase. I think it's okay. I like the parts where you have to hide from her and the part where you grind her, but running away from her in the sewers feels too clunky, especially when you have to look up to grab onto the handle. It is super slow. And I cannot forget that this is the first time seeing the prototype, which was a really nice setup for the future of this franchise. Overall, this chapter has really good gameplay elements, but also has the weakest main antagonist in my opinion. Doesn't mean she's bad, okay? I know someone is gonna be like, Mommy Longlegs is not a bad character. Who let bro cook? When I never said she was a bad character. Now it is time for the number 2 spot. This decision was really hard for me because both chapter 3 and 5 have a lot of highs, but there are some lows as well. Remember, no chapter is perfect. There are things chapter 5 does a way better job than 3, and there are things chapter 3 does a way better job than 5. But after replaying both chapters a whole lot more, number 2 is going to... This is a very close second, and if you have chapter 5 as your number 1, I don't blame you. It makes sense that you do, but personally, it goes to the number 2 spot, even though I did originally say chapter 5 is the best in my first playthrough. This is the best chapter. I don't care what anyone says, this is number 1. Yeah, you can see how recency bias was getting to me. But let's start with the positives, and these are huge positives. The graphics, the environment, the animations, the voice acting, and the lore are better than ever. If you are ranking these chapters based on story, then this is number 1 without a doubt. This chapter was stacked with surprise reveals. We got to experience Huggy Wuggy's backstory. We got to see Miss Gracie, who is evil Miss Rachel, who is also Lily Lovebraids. We got to see the prototype, and personally I think his design is awesome. And Huggy Wuggy and Kissy Missy get unexpectedly stabbed. Like, what is going on in this chapter? This chapter was insane with its storytelling. One big improvement from chapter 4 was polishing the game much more. I tried breaking this game for like 4 hours and I couldn't. This game was super polished, which made the experience a whole lot better. Another big improvement was adding a new hand. Actually, 2 hands. And these were great additions that made the gameplay more interesting. Not all the gameplay, but a good portion of it. Applying the pressure hand to push objects, to open specific doors, and to break glass made the puzzles feel different than usual, but also made sense to be incorporated with the main gimmick. The elemental hand reminds me of the green hand, where you have to gain the ability to burn something, to freeze something, or to activate power. I really enjoyed these mechanics. Giblet and Chum Chompkins were nice additions as well. Even though it was a little confusing that they were not in previous chapters, I still loved their debut. Lily Lovebraids was someone I disliked from the trailers. I thought she had no relevance to the story, but I was wrong. Her personality, the psychological horror, and her being Miss Gracie was presented extremely well. And we gotta talk about that backstory of Huggy Wuggy. Oh my gosh. Huggy Wuggy has been just through mental torture. Like, being forced to kill, it's just sad. And this place just so messed up. And I really love how they didn't tell us the story. They showed us. We were literally Huggy Wuggy in this moment. It just changed up the pacing of the game in a really interesting way. The prototype, Huggy Wuggy, Kissy Missy, Poppy, Lily Lovebraids, and Miss Gracie all felt connected in this chapter, unlike in chapter 4 with the Nightmare Critters and Yarnaby. They honestly felt pretty random. Now my main critique, which is holding it back from being number 1, is once again the gameplay. It is the same issue as chapter 4, where they do not have strong horror elements and gameplay to blend in with the story. It's not as bad as chapter 4 though. Like I said, the new hands are great additions, but there are some noticeable flaws still. There is like no horror in this chapter. I do not think I got scared once. Yes, there is psychological horror, but there are no unexpected jump scares to scare the player. You usually expect the jump scares. For example, Lily Lovebraids can do a countdown and then kill you without having to actually chase you, meaning you can expect to get jump scared. The game literally gives you a warning. Hey, you are about to get jump scared. 3, 2, 1. And her jump scare is not good. And her chase is also not good. One of the worst Poppy Playtime chases in my opinion. A chunk of sequences in this chapter can be confusing to the player. Like this door, for example. I can't open it, but when the chase activates, the door magically opens. And when Kissy Missy runs, you expect to follow her, but then you die. Why are we confusing the player? This chase was just added to drag out the game longer. I agree with what Markiplier had to say, where some of the gameplay elements were confusing and a little excessive. Not to the extent where the gameplay is completely trash. That is not what I am saying. There is still really good gameplay stuff here, like the new hands, and even that train chase at the end was awesome and action packed. But I do strongly believe with some tweaks here and there, it would have made this chapter a whole lot better. If this chapter had more horror elements to it, and if they just completely got rid of the Lily Love Bridge chase, I feel like the red light, green light sequence was enough, then this chapter definitely would have been number 1. Chapter 3. I love this chapter so much. It blends gameplay, horror, and its story in the best way possible. Without a doubt, this is the scariest chapter of them all. The atmosphere, the way Catnap stalks you throughout the chapter, Dog Day literally being eaten alive, you witnessed that? This game is just so messed up. Catnap unexpectedly jump scaring you when you think you are solving a puzzle is the scariest jump scare. And I do strongly believe that after chapter 3, they lost that sense of horror. Yes, the prototype is scary in terms of its concept, but like I mentioned earlier, he doesn't do anything to actually scare the player. He is cool, but not scary. Catnap is way scarier than him by a long shot. I also think this chapter has a perfect amount of characters. It is definitely more than chapter 2, but not to the point where it feels random. Each character makes perfect sense in this chapter. The smiling critters are the main hook and are represented as, the orphans, the children. So having a teacher in this chapter, that being Miss Delight, and a school makes sense. The smiling critters designs are pretty creepy looking as well. The way their mouths are open and their eyes. Catnap being the creepiest, of course. Those long legs. He even has an illusion transformation where he is a literal skeleton and his mouth is just dropping. Jesus, bro. The level design and the gameplay blend together way better than any other chapter. I do feel chapter 4 and 5 have a more linear structure and you kind of don't know where you're going to. Chapter 3's level design has you explore Playcare, which is the main area you will be navigating through the entire chapter. Everything feels connected, you know where you're gonna go next. Playcare is like this one big hub area, making it a lot more memorable. And each sub area you explore within Playcare is pretty distinct and interesting. Nothing feels dragged out just for the sake of being long. You got Home Sweet Home, which had a different take on the whole game's atmosphere. You're in a house instead of, the factory. Nightmare Huggy Wuggy climbing out of the TV was horrifying. The school with Miss Delight's sequence is one of the best and scariest gameplay sections in the entire franchise. Now, some of you may say, well, isn't it just putting a bunch of batteries into the wall? And yeah, it is, but with a twist. You have to keep your eye on Miss Delight. If you don't, an unexpected jump scare will occur. Existing gameplay elements can be even better when you put a twist on them, and Chapter 3 did just that. Chapter 4 failed at doing so with the Doctor, lacking challenge and depth. These two sequences both involve placing green batteries, but Miss Delight's sequence has way better execution, making her sequence far more engaging. Even the puzzles are some of the best in the franchise. They were definitely a huge step up from Chapter 2 in terms of difficulty. Now, some people did not like Chapter 3 because they believe some of them were just too difficult and annoying. I do agree to some extent. I felt like the green battery puzzle in Home Sweet Home was too annoying, but it's not as bad as Chapter 5's puzzles in my opinion. I can't forget about the two new hands that were introduced, the Shockwave hand and the Flare. Way better additions than the ones in Chapter 5, not because I think they are entirely better as gimmicks, but because they were utilized in more interesting ways. Another thing I like about Chapter 3, which they need to do more, is platforming. At the very start of the chapter, when Catnap throws you in the garbage disposal, there are a variety of platforming sections that you need to complete in order to reach to the other side. This is expanded later in the game with the Shockwave hand. You need to time your jumps right while also solving puzzles, blending the game's core mechanic and introducing a new new gameplay element at the same time. Now let's discuss the flare hand, which is basically a gun in Poppy Playtime. Pew pew. This mechanic is best utilized against the smiling critters, where you have to shoot at them to push them back. This part is also pretty scary because there are a lot of them sneaking up on you, meaning a jump scare can happen very unexpectedly. But what makes a good conclusion to any chapter is the finale. Does this chapter utilize the game mechanics you learn to their fullest potential and build up to its final sequence? Yes it does. The build-up is Catnap stalking you the entire game, which makes his appearance scary and mysterious. A lot of that suspense pays off at the end when you finally fight him. It's not a chase, it is a fight, and it is done really well. You have to place green batteries at certain times to fully power up this generator. You have to use your flare to check if that catnap is real or not. You have to use your shockwave hand to get on top of this area quickly in order to activate the smoke with the green hand. Remember how I said that the green hand was my favorite? Well, they incorporated that mechanic into an actual fight, making this battle the best and most memorable sequence in the franchise, in my opinion. My only critique of this finale is that they do not do a good job explaining it. I know they added Poppy dialogue to teach you, but even then that's still confusing to me. I think they should have done a VHS tape to actually show the player like what to do, kind of like how they did with the Whack-A-Wuggies and the color mini game. And like I said 1,000 times, if you were ranking these chapters based on story, then yeah, chapter 4 and 5 are definitely better than 3. But that doesn't mean chapter 3 did not have good storytelling. We got to learn about the Hour of Joy in this chapter, the most horrific moment I would say in the history of this factory. The tone, the atmosphere, and gameplay are done correctly for a great horror experience, which is why I believe chapter 3 is still the best chapter. Oh man, that was a lot of yapping. If you guys ended up enjoying this video, please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. If you want to chat with me or express your own opinions, then feel free to join my Discord server. The link is in the bio and in the description. Thank you all for watching today's video, and I'll see you all in the next one. Peace!